Assalamu alaikum everyone and welcome to another episode of the Geek Dhaba. Joining me today is the illustrious and very lovely Kamza. And we're going to be talking about,
Miss Marvel, finally.
yes, uh, before we get into it, let's open the Dhaba. Miss Marvel is just a great show in my opinion.
I loved it too. I mean, I loved everything about it. I love how we finally have a Pakistani female Muslim representation of a superhero. Because this has been something that's been in the work for a while now. But as expected, we got some hate towards it, which was not really justified in my opinion. But
Not at all.
what can you say? But I loved everything about it. I loved Kamala. I mean, she's adorable.
So I agree. Like, I am super in love with Kamala's character. The actress is also super
I
adorable
know,
in all
right?
their interviews, right?
Yeah,
That she must be protected, right?
she
She
must.
is she is just adorable, and I can't wait to see more.
I
Uh,
know, right? Like the show, ending of the show, we know we are gonna get her in the Marvels, and I'm like really excited for that at this point because we get more of her.
for sure. We get to see a lot of. There's a lot to unpack here, right? So let's start
Yeah.
off from the beginning, right?
Hmm.
Immigrant families. As
Yeah.
someone who's lived in Australia and America for a decent chunk of time, perfectly represented, right? Like my family is very close to how Kamala's family is represented, right? Especially like living abroad. Like my mother was a big fan of David Bowie. My dad was a big fan of like the Police and Bon Jovi and all these people like Brian Adams. My mom loved Brian Adams, right? So like
Yeah.
all of these like things. Uh, oh, my mom was also a big fan of Wham and Culture Club. So it's like a bunch of like seeing like them obsess over like
Hmm.
American things that they grew up with and they left
The emotional
Pakistan for it.
attachment.
Yeah. So I experienced that a lot and
Yeah.
like growing up I experienced that a lot. And seeing that here like really made me like pine for that moment in my life
I
where
know. I completely agree.
yeah, so like it's just perfectly represented the high school, everything that was shown like as a Muslim kid in high school, just kind of being an outcast of sorts, like being shy
Hmm.
because you don't know where you stand. I've been through that. Kamala, I'm there for you. I've been through that.
I mean, like, I didn't go to high school there or anything whatsoever, but I have traveled and I have seen how families are treated across the world at this point, especially in the US, because I lived there for a while. But yeah, my khala is the exact representation of Muniba. I mean, she had the Bon Jovi t-shirts, the music. She had the Wham cassettes playing in the car that we got sick of at one point. I mean, you get tired of it, but I mean, the representation we got, it was on point. And not to mention, like, we got to see the fact that we got to see Muniba being that desi parent, but we also got to see why she was like that. We saw growth in the family as well, which was very unrealistic,
Mhm.
but it was there. And I loved her connection with her nani as well. How we got to see so much history of the partition, which was like very real for so many people that are still here.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people that I still hear stories from about everything they went through during the partition.
Right. So I want to touch upon partition in a little bit when we get to those episodes. Right
Hmm.
now, like yes, it was shown really well, but there are some things we need to touch upon when we get there. Some controversial stuff once we get there.
Hmm.
Right. And right now I want to go episode like talk about key things episode wise, right? So like we've talked about representation, right? Uh, and the other thing is that I want to talk about is how nice that wedding scene looked,
Yeah.
right? Like it felt like a proper desi shadi pic with gaya hua hai.
Oh,
right?
for sure. I mean, we have all our weddings held like this at this point, I'm guessing.
Oh, exactly. Like the few that I've been to, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't have many friends. The few that I have gone to is like, uh, yeah, that this is how it is. Like a lot of dancing to like a lot of oldies, a lot of new songs, and it's like the only thing that I like over here is the brown Jovi, and I need that in my life. As a big Bon Jovi lover and Bon Jovi fan, I need brown Jovi in my life.
Honestly, as somebody that's a huge Bon Jovi fan as well, I sort of agree. I mean, I love the entire wedding thing because most of my wedding experiences have been through Snapchat and Instagram and living vicariously through other people's because of a desi mother that had issues with me going out. But I mean, it was pretty on point. The entire experience, the gossiping, aunties in the
Oh yeah.
corner, the teens on the dance floor, and the food. I mean, it was all amazing.
And in that same episode, um, I don't know how people perceived that whole the mosque community thing where like there's an
Hmm.
event and everybody's there and they kind of labeled all the different groups of people like the Illuminantes and the halal bros and stuff like that,
The
right?
only segregations we are here for.
Right. So like I've experienced that. Like I've gone to like
Yeah.
these mosque community events and
Mm.
stuff like that, 2002, 2003, 2006, right?
Yeah.
So I have seen all of those different types of people
Hmm.
in the mosque in America. And like I said, a lot of the stuff that I see in this series hits really close to home because I've seen all of it.
Yep.
Right now, I know like I don't know if people complained about it in Pakistan because obviously they haven't seen that experience, right? They
Yeah.
haven't experienced that communityness that is there in America,
Yeah.
right? But like it's there. That's exactly how it is, right? And
I agree.
I loved it. The damage control being one of the main villains also a fantastic choice in my opinion. Like we
Yeah.
don't need a physical villain, an entity villain as damage control. Yes,
Sometimes it's just the police.
we had the character Najma, played by a very good Pakistani actress, whose name I will
Yeah.
not pronounce because I'm afraid of butchering it. So I will say her first name Nimra, but not her last name. I don't know how to pronounce her.
I don't even know her last name. So,
Right.
but
So
she fit well into the role. I mean, she was amazing at it.
she was great. I saw her in Kamli as well, another Pakistani movie that came out recently. She was great in that too,
Hmm.
right? And I saw her here, and she was fantastic again. She's great. She did a fantastic job. Moving over to the Karachi episode,
Oh
our
my
hometown,
god.
our hometown.
I mean, I was in Karachi the night before that episode came out. I mean, I was almost in tears watching that episode. I mean, Bahadrabad, the Burns Road, the entire area is where I grew up.
I lived like most of my life in Karachi. Like being in the Air Force, I've
Yeah.
traveled a lot. Like my dad being in the Air Force, I've traveled a lot of cities in Pakistan.
Hmm.
Finally settling down in Islamabad, but my most of my life, I think 12 to 15 years of my life, I spent in Karachi.
Yeah.
And seeing all of that stuff in Karachi, like people gathering on like the beach and Teen Talwar and all of these
Mm,
places, warmed my heart. And I missed Karachi, and
I
I
know.
I wanted to go back. I wanted to be like, hey mom, let's go to Karachi again. It's been a long time.
I know, right? I get it. Like, I just threw me back into. It was even just like more nostalgic because I was at Teen Talwar the night before that episode came out, and Bahadrabad where I sat and I had chat, and it was like reliving being in Karachi. Honestly,
I am sad that they didn't actually film the episode in Karachi.
it makes sense why, but they tried their best to be close to it as possible.
Yeah, I mean like
And we got to see more Pakistani representation as well, like her cousins and stuff. And how
yep.
her cousins were bullying her for not being raised in Pakistan. And like I've seen that happen because it happened to me as well. Because
It happened to me the other way around.
yeah,
I got bullied for being raised in Pakistan.
yeah, I got bullied for not being very Pakistani, but
No,
with
I
the
got
representation of that was it. Like I could relate with her when they started calling her baby sloth baby.
like they filmed a lot of it in like Thailand, that entire episode, right? And
Mm.
I've been to Thailand, and when I was in Thailand, I used to say to my mom and my dad, okay, like a lot of these roads remind me of Karachi. So I'm pretty okay with filming it in Thailand and Bangkok specifically because
Yeah.
it's very close. It's very similar. Like
It's very the food streets and the rush,
yep,
the
like
Chinese restaurants.
the some of the flyovers and road
Yeah.
congestions and stuff like that. It feels very, very uh,
Close to home.
Karachi. Yeah, like I didn't feel like I was out of place when I visited Bangkok like a few years back.
But now talking about Karachi, I mean, another highlight that was in the episode was when Najma had a change of heart when she was opening the portal. I mean, I love that moment so much because like she realized that there is nothing more that should mean to her besides her son. And it was Kamala that actually raised this point to her and then led to her Nimra giving up her life for it as well. It's just
Yep.
unfortunate the last thing Kamran remembers is his mother betraying him, but like still.
So gonna I don't know if it was clear, but this is gonna be spoilery slightly. So if you haven't seen the show yet, you definitely should watch it. But going further into it, now that we've actually touched upon the whole Najma
Hmm.
getting into the whole clandestine thing. Red Dagger is also great. Like, just touch upon Red Daggers really quick before we go into the partition stuff. I loved it.
Yeah,
Right.
same.
My friend told me a long time ago when he read Miss Marvel that hey, there's Pakistani superhero named Red Dagger, and I was like, oh wait,
Mm.
I've been writing Pakistani heroes for 10 years. Where's my
Mm.
representation? Right. So it's like
Mm.
it's fine, but I love the way it was presented.
I know, I loved it.
Right. So
It was
now
kind of sad what happened to him, but I'm glad they helped Kamala actually understand better about her powers.
Yep.
They helped her train, and it helped her grow into the Miss Marvel character we got in the end.
Yep. Now quickly touching upon partition. A lot of people are whining about this. My little brother was
Mm.
whining about the partition scene. And I have to say, I think it was aptly presented. As controversial as what I'm saying is, I
Mm.
think that it was aptly presented because what we know is what is written in our history books. Right?
Yep.
What actually happened, to get a clearer picture of what exactly went on, you have to understand all three perspectives. Right? What we've presented in our history books is a portion of what went on, while the things presented in the story in the British history books and the Indian history books are two other different perspectives and two other partial like
I mean, I agree because
stories.
like yeah, I agree because like my dada and my dada's cousins were present during the partition. Like my dada was one of the people present during the signing that happened for the independence, and he has told me so many stories about it. I have grown up hearing stories about the partition. I have grown up hearing stories from my nanny about my nana during the partition, and everybody had a different perspective about what happened because it was a huge mess what happened. It was millions of people being shifted to different sections of the country because we didn't have just Pakistan, we had East and West Pakistan both. People were rushing to both sides of the country. I
Like
mean, they could have handled it better, but it's a Marvel show, right? They have to make sure that anybody that is watching the show is able to understand what is going on. They have to make it a show clear enough to touch everybody that's able to watch the show.
yeah, so like that's not just the point though. The point like I was gonna make was that when Kamala's grandmother says that
Hmm.
a British man had the idea of Pakistan, right? It wasn't that he said, that's what people think she said. That's not exactly what she said. The British did try to divide Muslims and Hindus against one another when they introduced the pork bullets, the pork pouches,
Yep.
something that had to do with pork grease that had to be applied, that Muslims were reluctant to do so, right? Which ended up causing one of the divides, and many other things
Yep.
that domino affected into it, right?
Mm.
She was referring to that, right? And then a lot of other things that took place, like how Fawad Khan refers to
Mm.
Gandhi instead of Jinnah,
Yeah.
right? But here's the thing, and a lot of people who have been a part of partition, I've talked to a lot of friends who have living grandparents who were a part of partition,
Yep.
right? And people who have heard stories from the grandparents. Even then, I've heard from them, nobody knew what Jinnah was doing, what Gandhi was doing. Nobody had time to worry about it, right? Gandhi
Yep.
was, people often said, even though both Jinnah and Gandhi were doing, a lot of people just heard Gandhi, right? Now,
Yep.
that's like saying, like a slightly poor example would be, oh, Imran Khan's ministers are doing a bunch of crap, but Imran Khan's getting blamed for it, right?
Yep.
So, like that kind of thing, right? Jinnah is doing
Yeah.
his job,
Mm.
but obviously, the person in the eyes of everybody else, India was a larger country. Hindus
Yep.
were a larger majority. And they saw Gandhi. So when the stories of people were hearing about it, there was no widespread news availability. There was no social media back then.
Yeah, and especially consider the fact that Gandhi was already well known. Like
Yeah,
Jinnah was still, considering all the events, Jinnah was still new-ish when he joined. And like he had spent more time abroad than in Pakistan, based on the history that I remember. But yeah, Gandhi had more of a connection. I mean, he had all those marches and everything, and we're forgetting that a lot of communication that happened during that time period was by it was by word. Like it was stuff they were hearing from other people, and there must have been a ton of miscommunication. People were unsafe, people were being killed, so not a lot of news was reaching people properly. I mean, I remember hearing from one of my mom's cousins that they didn't even know the partition was happening 4 days until it happened, because they were in a very far south of the corner of the country where they had to walk miles to get to a train, and they
that's
didn't know until a week. So you can't be too sure about what was happening because we weren't there.
exactly that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Like we weren't on the ground of actually being there, right?
Yeah.
Now, obviously, when Pakistani writers touch upon partition as a subject, they like to say Jinnah ye, Jinnah wo. I'm not discounting what Jinnah did. Jinnah did a great job. He had a
Hmm.
big role to play in the partition. But
Yeah.
if you're trying to portray it accurately, I think Miss Marvel did it accurately,
Yep.
right? That's all I want to say about the partition. Now let's talk about
Hmm.
Navishayat and Fawad Khan. Brilliant.
I love
It
them.
goes.
I mean, they were so cute together.
The thing is, not only were they cute together, it just goes to show the difference. Like I've seen Fawad Khan and I've seen Navishayat in Pakistani dramas in passing,
The difference in having a good writer, I agree.
right? Not just a good writer, a good director,
Yeah.
right? Like I won't say they were perfect actors. I noted some like blandish deliveries and
Hmm.
expressions that just didn't sit right with me. But for the most part, I want to say 90% of their performance was great.
It was. I mean, flaws are expected considering the fact that this is still an international production trying to show Pakistani representation. And even though they had Pakistani actors, it was something that was bound to happen.
Yep,
But the way they still represented it, the relationship, the way it blossomed, the way Aisha started trusting him, and then the baby, I forget her name, the baby Nani,
Sana.
that was like, yes, Sana, that was adorable.
It was all great. I think the representation overall, Pakistan wise, was fantastic. And
Hmm.
I just, I don't know. I liked their performance. I really did.
Yeah.
And I wasn't expecting, like, good performance from Pakistani actors. If I'm being very honest, because I've seen some really garbo series
I
in
honestly
Pakistan,
did not either. And this is somebody who stopped watching Pakistani stuff ages ago.
right? I've, like, I don't know. I've seen them in other stuff. Their acting, and a lot of places has been bland deliveries, bland dialogue, a lot of stuff, right? But now I realize that they are actually great actors. They just have bad writing and bad
And bad
direction,
direction. Yep.
right? So
Okay,
now,
but moving forward, I honestly, another thing I loved about this entire part of the episode, especially with Sana at the train station, even, was how they were consistent with the timeline. I mean, in the end, it turned out that Kamala was the one that gave Sana the stars. And I loved how they remained in touch with it. That Kamala got a second with her great grandmother,
mhm,
Aisha, and she was able to have a second to see what was happening. And she was pulled into that moment. And she was the one that helped Sana see the stars that led her to her dad again and getting on board. I
like
mean, they kept the timeline consistent.
I love that entire train scene.
Yep.
The thing that I love the most about that train scene is that it has a lot of purposes, right? It shows the people who don't know about Pakistan the kind of struggles we had to go through to get our own nation,
Yep.
right? That's number one.
Yeah.
Number two, it shows Kamala, who has no connection to her Pakistani roots at all, what
Yep.
what it took to have these roots, right?
Yep.
And it gave her a connection to her family way back when, a connection that she never knew that she had, or never knew that she
Yes.
wanted, right? So the entire train scene was absolutely like beautifully handled, and it has so many levels to it. Like I was watching, and we watched it together. I had tears in my eyes,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah. We were both getting teary during that
yep,
episode, to be
it
honest. I
it
mean, it
was.
was
I will go
wholesome, it
as
was sweet, and the way Kamala had such a better understanding of what her grandmother and her mother have been through, and the way she had such a better bond up with both of them after that was just sweet.
I will go as far as saying that I think the fifth, I think it was the fifth episode, right? Where this
Yep.
backstory took place. I think it's my favorite episode in the series. Even though
I loved it.
we're about to touch upon the sixth episode, and the sixth episode is going to be really great, right?
Yep.
I think the sixth episode five is my favorite. Then it comes to six,
Yep.
right? Then it's four, three, two, one, or whatever the order doesn't
Yep.
matter.
Okay, but like, and after that, when when we got to see how Kamala handled herself in front of the clandestines, and yeah, and the way that Kamran's mom gave herself up to save Kamran, and then Kamran ended up with powers because of that entire situation was amazing to watch. But I felt so sorry for the dude with how he now felt like he was a, and that led to him being the anti-hero, anti-supervillain sort of thing, where he is now going to be a mix of two, and I'm looking forward to seeing him in more stuff.
Now let's move on to the final finale really quickly and talk about our scores. Let's quickly cover some key things in the finale that we love. There's only a couple of things to cover. It's not really a lot to cover in the finale, right?
Hmm.
Miss Marvel's costume is fantastic. End of discussion. I don't want to
I
hear
loved
anybody
it.
else say anything else, right? If you don't love it, we're not friends, right? I
I mean,
love
like, you're not wrong.
I love Miss Marvel's costume, right?
I know, same.
I love when she said "in begin" and just became like this stretchy, big, just like the
Yeah.
comics. Loved
Yeah.
it, right? Not a lot of other stuff to cover. The fight was great. Just watch the finale. It was a great episode, right? The sense of community and
Yeah.
everything in that episode was fantastic.
I know the way all the people showed up in support, how they formed a barrier around her was just, I loved it.
It was beautiful, right? And now I want to talk about something that I didn't notice the first time around. Amar had to come in and tell me about it, and then I want to talk about. Going to talk about the post credit scene,
Yeah, I did.
and we'll get to it later,
Yeah.
right? As everybody knows, there is one Marvel franchise that I will die on a hill for, right? One that has
Yep.
not made an appearance in the MCU, or kind of has, but not exactly made an appearance in the MCU yet, right? And they hinted at
Initiate
it,
drum roll.
and they hinted at it so well. When Bruno tells Kamala
Yep.
that she has a mutation, The small riff of the animated X-Men series plays, and I am here for it.
Yep. I mean, I freaked out after I realized what was going on. After Amar told you, and then you told me.
Amar came in and said, "Listen closer to that scene." I listened to it, and I heard the dun, 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 and I was like, "Ah!"
But yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to what they do with this. I'm hoping they're gonna start bringing this more into Inhumans eventually when Kamala starts being part of that.
Yeah. Yep. I think Kamala originally was a mutant, and then he got like moved to Inhumans because of the whole X-Men not being with Disney. I think they're gonna go the
Yeah.
original route here and make her a mutant,
Most likely.
most likely. But let's see how this
But
goes.
I
Right?
think we're gonna get more of that. I think we're gonna find out more about this in the Marvels when we get that movie.
We won't know for sure until 23rd of July because that's San Diego Comic Con.
Oh right, yeah. I'm excited for that Comic Con.
Right? And then in September we have D23.
Yes.
Right. So now.
Okay, now we can talk about the final credit scene.
She swapped places with Captain Danvers. That's it.
Yeah. I mean, she looks so different. Like, what the hell? I can't tell if it was either her costume shrank or she swapped places. If she swapped places, where is Carol Danvers coming from? Where was poor Kamala thrown off into?
Exactly. I want to know what's going on. And I can't wait to see that movie. I think it's coming out next year. The first. I think it's coming out in February next year. So we'll get that.
I believe so.
So we're going to get to see that really soon.
Yes.
Right?
And I'm excited for it.
There's nothing else to talk about. I think let's just go to scores. My score is 9.5 out of 10.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I'm gonna give it a 10 because I haven't read the comics enough to pick more details out, but yeah, it's a 10 from me.
9.5 out of 10 for me. What did you guys think? Did you guys love it? Did you guys hate it? If you guys hated it, don't talk to me. And be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share. And that's it. I guess it's time to close the dhaba, and I'll see you all next time.